All right, Barrister Mbeseha, let's have your thoughts on this particular one. I love the comparison and how he tried to let everyone know of how great Pa Endeley is. I know you have more of these in your historical archive, and you want to share some wealth of knowledge from the depot that there is within you.
Well, it is important to repeat the history, and it is pathetic that people don't know. Just a small correction. Dr. Endeley did not withdraw from Enugu in 1954. No. There were 13 of them. They pulled out of the Enugu house in 1953. It was 53 they pulled out. And then they effectively started to set up the institutions in Boya in 19. What did they do in 1954? That marked the starting of the institutions. They held their first assembly, which you can be called today the National Assembly. They held it in Upper Farms, that is behind the Prime Minister's Lodge, in the Thatched House. I have pictures of that thatched house, I've shared it before. That's where they held their first assembly, the 13 who withdrew from Enugu. And then you talked about the lodge. The lodge is symbolic. It represents something to all Ambazonians, Southern Cameroonians. It represents something that the Yaoundé administration has always pretended not to know. I followed them on their network. Nobody has ever mentioned Endeley in the history of Cameroon as being a hero for withdrawing with his 13 people from Enugu. They don't feature anywhere there in the history of Cameroon. And that is the Cameroon that we want to be part. Now, history is history. That withdrawal and what we do today, and only House of the Ocean is symbolic of what this struggle is. And a reminder, they've mentioned name there, that the withdrawal, the struggle, and what we look for is not administrative, ministerial, and political advantages. Being named minister left or right, being named director A or C, that is not what it is about. The Portasons, the Tangajis, will come and go. They are current people. There were many before them. The Endeleys all came and went. The Iti Igwes all came and went. The Enotanjongs all came and went. So it is not about personality, it is about the institutions. Even Foncha, Endeley we talked about, came and when they died, the institutions remained. So the struggle is not about privileges that people enjoy from time to time. It is about the institutions that will last forever, which is what the struggle is about. It is not about occupying presidential office, the prime minister's office, because it will rotate. Sometimes it will even change names. That is not what it is. The function, the office of prime minister will remain permanently, but will be occupied by different people under specific guidelines. And so the history is reading with facts, most of which are being hidden. Remember in 2016, very few people saw this thing. When the purported unification came, somebody ventured somewhere in Douala to put out the statue of Foncha, who was the architect of the revolution, of the unification. In 2016, when the signs of resistance came up, the first thing they did in Douala was to pull down the statue of Foncha and dragged it in the mud through the streets in Douala. That was done publicly. And so if these things are turned down, which are simply symbolic, that statue standing in Douala there would have simply been like the home you base, they respect today. For future generation, who is this man standing here? The story would have been told. But they pulled it down, smashed it to pieces. They were not just pulling down Foncha, they were pulling down the institutions that he brought. Because Foncha had long since died, that statue standing there was no longer him. It was a symbol of something. And so that is what it is. It's a reminder today, we talk in 2025, October, is coming for elections. It is a lesson for our brothers and sisters, the Akeremonas, the Agwambalas, and whoever who wants to run for the presidency of Cameroon. It's a reminder to them that they have promised to solve the Anglophone problem from the presidency. The Anglophone problem is more than the presidency. Whoever occupies it, it is about the institutions. Which institutions will not be solved from the presidency of Cameroon? Which institutions will not be solved alone from the parliament or from the senate, whatever political structures they have there? No, they will be solved when the two parties that agreed to join should be able to agree to part their ways. When two people agree to marry, they sign a contract. Even if they don't sign, they go and live with the man, what they call come stay. There comes a time when the man says, "No, I want to marry a different woman," and you leave. Or there comes a time when the woman says, "I found somebody who will marry me," and leave. That should not be a problem. Living together is a question of volunteer. It's a question of will. Once the will is no longer there, you cannot force the will by force. And so, back to Endeley. They are symbolic to us. They are all dead, but their names are not forgotten. Not just their names, the steps they took, which were symbolic, political freedom, will remain forever part of us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Barrister Mbeseha. Now, moving on to the second broadcast. It was titled the 11th Province. The voice of Ambazonia expressed what it describes as a long-standing and silent betrayal of the Ambazonian people, rooted in cultural infiltration and political substitution. The editorial recounts how French-speaking refugees fleeing the UPC rebellion in the 1950s were welcomed and integrated into British Southern Cameroons, then a bastion of tolerance under British rule. However, it argues that many descendants of those refugees through the English-speaking gradually rose to prominence while aligning their royalty and loyalty with Yaoundé's central and centralized Francophone regime rather than with Ambazonians' aspirations. So the broadcast sharply criticizes several prominent figures such as Prime Minister Dion Joseph Ngute, diplomat Felix Mbayu, and historians like Professor Julius Ngo, accusing them of masquerading as Anglophone representatives while serving as instruments of assimilation. And so the term 11th province is used to describe this hybrid class, fluent in English but allegedly disconnected from Ambazonian identity. It also questions Cameroon's membership in the Commonwealth, asserting it was only made possible through Ambazonians' heritage. Yet, native Ambazonians have been excluded from representing the country in the organization. This editorial called for public awareness of this political substitution, framing it as a deliberate strategy to erase Ambazonian voices from history and diplomacy. Let's hear how Martin Mongo puts it.
This is the voice of Ambazonia. Good day, listeners. Today is Monday, July 21st, 2025. Today we take you into the heart of a silent betrayal, one that has reshaped the destiny of Ambazonia, not with guns or tanks, but through quiet infiltration, cultural erasure, and political substitution. This is the story of the 11th province. In the 1950s, as French Cameroon burned from the violent UPC uprising, thousands of French-speaking refugees fled west, seeking safety in British Southern Cameroons. These were men, women, and children from the Bamileke and Mbeseha heartlands, escaping French bullets, torture, and scorched villages. And Ambazonia, then still called British Southern Cameroons, welcomed them. They were housed, educated, protected, and integrated. Under British rule, Southern Cameroon stood for order, tolerance, and a strong sense of community. refugees found a new home in Kumba, Tiko, Boya, Bamenda, and Manfred. But with this kindness came a cost we are only beginning to fully understand. Fast forward to the 1961 plebiscite. The people of Southern Cameroon were asked, join Nigeria or reunite with French Cameroon. General Foncha, with strong support, including from many of these newly integrated refugees, championed reunification. He spoke of a common German past, of brotherhood, but one man saw through the illusion, Dr. E.M.L. Endeley. He warned that what they call reunification was actually assimilation, and he was right. Endeley lost. Reunification happened, and a quiet conquest began. Soon after, something subtle but dangerous occurred. The children of these refugee families, now English-speaking and living among us, started receiving scholarships, overseas opportunities, and appointments in government. On paper, they were Anglophones. In truth, their loyalty remained across the Mongol. By the 1980s, they had become Cameroon's new class of Anglophone representatives. But something was off. They celebrated promotions in Banfang, Bangante, and Chang, buried their dead in Bafoussam and Douala. And when Ambazonia cried out for justice, they remained silent, or worse, defended the regime. A new identity emerged, the 11th province, a community neither fully Anglophone nor truly Ambazonian, yet now claiming to speak for both. Names? Yes, let's name them. Prime Minister Dion Ngute, Felix Mbayu, Cameroon's face to the Commonwealth. Professor Julius Ngo, the state's historical voice. Professor Sylvestre Kwankam, Professor Njok, the late Professor Nasser. Former Minister Tom Dio, the late Professor Monikoso, all fluent in English, all visible, but all linked to the structure that denies Ambazonia its voice. And beyond them, other figures like media personalities Ellie Smith and Wete Francis, and activists Cho Ayaba and Milan Atam have been accused of acting as proxies, using their platforms to mislead international audiences, deflecting attention from the root of the Ambazonian question. Let's talk about the Commonwealth. Cameroon was admitted in 1995, not because of Francophone values, but because of us, because of Ambazonia. Yet, since then, not a single native Ambazonian has been allowed to represent Cameroon in Commonwealth affairs. Only 11th province loyalists, people who wear our language like a costume, but defend Yaoundé's agenda, have stood in our place. As President Dr. Samuel Sako put it, Cameroon entered the Commonwealth wearing our clothes, but they never let us speak. They used our name and silenced our voice. Now, here's the harder truth. This is not just about people or personalities, it's about systems. It's about Paul Biyer's communal liberalism. His ideological manifesto, his on Mein Kampf, which defines Anglophones not as equal citizens but as territories to be controlled. And it's enforced by a shadowy network, the Essingen cult, the true engine of Yaoundé's rule. Once you understand that, you realize no reform, no decentralization, no commission or dialogue will dismantle this prejudice. It's embedded in the state's DNA. As Dr. Sako warned, there is no statute, no commission, no shared language that can undo the political theology of conquest embedded in Biya's Cameroon. The only path of least resistance for Ambazonia is complete separation. Ambazonia gave refuge, it offers safety, and it extended grace. But that grace was turned against it. This is the 11th province dilemma, and this is the voice of Ambazonia. Good day.
Barrister Mbeseha, here is another one. I think that all of this literature and editorial is to keep Ambazonians grounded in things that they need to know that has happened way before now. What would you say?
Well, the editor is so informative, but it's also very, very important and very, very analytical. Because, it speaks louder than many other things. It speaks clearer than many things that was known before. The issue of the 11th province, simply put, forget about the word 11, is the issue of migration across borders for security reasons. That's just about it. If we call the Bamidi case and whoever you have it there, ran away from their own country to Ambazonia, southern Cameroon, for security reasons. They were being forced out of their places. They came there because they sought safety. And it is well duplicated, it is well explained. If you know Kumba, if you go to Kumba right now as you speak, as you move towards Boa Road, towards the park, to the right, there's a whole quarter there, they call it Yaoundé quarters. Yaoundé is not in Cameroon, in southern Cameroon. Yaoundé is the capital of Cameroon in the east. The Yaoundé people came there and had a whole quarter where they lived in there. They call it Yaoundé quarter. They still there. In every Kumba, go down to Fiango, somewhere there, you're going to find Bamileke quarters. They came there, they built a colony, they had a whole quarter named after them. Go to Bonge, you find something they call Igbo quarters. The Igbos lived there. So it was a community that had everything. Was this unique? No, it was not unique. It's common around the world. And for us to properly understand, remember that today as we speak in the United States, the Irish population is very, very powerful. Ireland is not part of America. Ireland is in Europe. The Irish who fled from Europe for religious reasons landed in America. They are today known as Irish Americans. Just as you have Polish Americans, you have Ukrainian Americans. The thing that is peculiar, very, very unique with our own case, is that whereas the Irish came to America, they never sought to make America a province in Ireland. They lived in America, they enjoyed the facilities, they supported the Americans from then till today. Probably we didn't know that John F. Kennedy, who was the president in 1964-61, was an Irish American. He rose up to that level and became the president of America without cutting an inch of America and making it Ireland. That's just like that. And so the Israelis, when they left Egypt, they looked for a home of their own. They fled from trouble, from persecution, and they landed in Israel. They had never sought to make Israel a province of Egypt. So our problem is this 11th province. They got there and they enjoyed the facilities. They went to schools, they any other person. They got scholarships. They were embraced, they were welcome. But the difficulty is, today as we speak, is now that these people have acquired all these things, they refuse to use it for the benefit of the host country that took them. They use them to distort history and make their host country that received them in their grandparents and their parents in good faith. They try to use them to make them part of their original country. Like the Igbos. With the Igbo who came and settled in Kumba, the Igbo quarter is still there. Will it be right for them to make that part of Kumba, part of Biafra or Eastern Nigeria? Certainly not. And so the 11 province people who don't have to their education, they went to South, they went to Secretariat, they went to all the schools that we had, the elite schools we call them. They acquired the education. But again, sadly, when the Ambazonia is being erased from the map of the world, who are among them? Medical specialists, who have historians, everything you could find, lawyers. They have refused to use the expertise that they acquired while in the foreign land. They have tried to use that, they have refused to use that expertise to help develop the land that hosted them. They rather took them and saved their own lives. They've not done it. And so you find people like Professor Ngo, he's a historian in his own right. He's even a professor. He has written books. But the curious thing about it, he writes the gift, he gives the facts, and then he seeks to turn the thing to blame. He makes the victim, he makes us the victims. We are the victims. He wants us to bear responsibility. For example, for going to Fumban and not fighting for ourselves, he refused to realize that Fumban was staged to deceive Francha. As a historian, he refuses to see this. They didn't do this. who are in their own right educated people, professors, diplomats. He goes to Banjul, is shamelessly calling us terrorists when he knows what we're fighting for. He will leave it for a court staff, a court judge to remind him that here we are before the court, terrorists don't go to court. And so there are so many of those things like that. That's the peculiar nature of our struggle. It's not an insult. Why did they become 11th province? They became 11th province because they refused to incorporate themselves into the 10th province. We were called the 10th province at the time, in the 1990s. And many people don't even know the history behind the 11th province. The history behind the 11th province actually starts strongly from 1990, when there was something in the southwest, then we call southern southwest today. There was something we tried to create that was an active member of it, because well as Southwest Development Association, which we were trying to set up, and the people thought that they could get there. And then people say, well, you get here, but you have to take the position of a stranger. Somebody just acquired the nationality of Ambazonia. Just like in America, you cannot become president unless you are born. They said, no, if you don't let us get into it, we shall create our own province, which we shall call 11th province. That's the history behind 11th province. Because these people will not recognize the fact that Ambazonia, southern Cameroon, have received them. They were not born children of Ambazonia because their parents were not like that. They had migrated. And so they created the 11th province. It has matured into other things. We produce out of them the best, the Monikosos. And those people all named there, the Bijangas. Some of them even won elections. One of them won in Tico, a Basa guy. I went to parliament, and what did he do? 1990, he stood and said his first defense is to defend the Basas. And so this is the history of betrayal. This history of, I don't know how to describe it. But what has Southern Cameroonians done to them? Have we woken up in anger and chased them out? No. We've just woken up in surprise, and we're trying to educate the world where we are. Bury your corpses where you want. Nobody ever refused to listen pastor to go and bury your corpse in Kumba, in Bafang, or to go and bury your corpse in Bunda, from Bamenda. You're free to do that. We are here, we carry our corpses back home, to go and bury in Cameroon, to go and bury in Ambazonia, to go and bury in Ghana. But that burial does not make Ghana part of America. Keep to your roots, but respect the host. Respect to the man who brought up the foster child, educated you like his or hers, gave you everything that you needed. The best you can do to that person is to give them the due respect. Go to their own funerals, cry them like your own parents, because they are no longer there even to drink a cup of tea from you. But don't forget that without them, you would not be there. You cannot take their compounds for years. And so that's the history behind the 11th province. That's the sad dilemma that we face. If any of them doubts what I'm saying, let them challenge us publicly to these facts, to this narrative. And so that's the 11th province. The doors are still open, but never shall Bamileke in Kumba make the Bamileke quarter in Kumba or Bafang. Never shall the Igbos in Igbo quarter in Kumba make the Igbo quarter in Kumba part of Nigeria. And so never shall the Ewondo, the Yaoundé quarter people in Kumba make that parcel of land near the park, the motor park, part of Yaoundé, in the name of reunification. No, enough is enough. So we say, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Barrister Mbeseha. So much for the 11th province. Well, we'll definitely see how much they can say. We'll be waiting to see if they would disagree with what you and Dr. Martins Mungwer has said.